Chosen one. What I'm about to tell you is something most people will never understand, no matter how clearly it's spoken. Not because it's hidden, but because it was never meant for them. It was meant for you. You, who have felt the quiet unraveling inside your reality. You who have sensed that something is shifting beneath the surface of your life, even when everything appears unchanged on the outside. This is not confusion, and it is not chaos. What you are experiencing is a sacred collapse. There is a divine intelligence moving through your life right now, dismantling illusions you once depended on. And it feels disorienting because those illusions once gave you a sense of identity, stability, and direction. But what you are beginning to realize is that they were never built on truth. You are not losing your way. You are losing what was never truly yours. And that is why this moment feels so intense, because you are standing at the edge of two timelines, the one you were conditioned to live and the one your soul came here to activate. Most people are born into systems they never question, into beliefs they inherit without awareness, into patterns they repeat without understanding, and into roles they perform without ever asking why. They call it life, but it is a loop, a carefully constructed reality that rewards conformity and quietly suppresses awakening. But you were never designed to remain asleep inside it. From an early point in your life, you felt different, not in a way that made you better than others, but in a way that made you feel separate, as if you were observing the world instead of fully belonging to it. There was always something within you that sensed that what everyone else accepted so easily was incomplete, as if you could feel a deeper layer of reality just beneath the surface. Because of that awareness, you struggled in ways you could not always explain. Not because you were weak, but because you could see beyond the illusion while still being forced to live inside it. That tension you carried, that silent questioning, that feeling of not fully fitting into the structure around you, was never a flaw. It was your awakening, trying to begin long before you had the language to understand it. You have likely asked yourself many times why your life has felt so unstable, even when you tried to follow the path that was supposed to lead to security and success. You may have wondered why things seem to fall apart just as they begin to make sense, why connections fade unexpectedly, why opportunities shift, and why plans dissolve without warning. It can feel like you are being pulled in different directions without control, but the truth is far deeper than that. This is not punishment, and it is not failure. It is protection. You were never meant to build a permanent life on temporary truths, and so every time you tried to anchor yourself into something that did not align with your deeper path, it was gently or sometimes forcefully removed. Not because you did something wrong, but because your soul refused to settle for a reality that was not aligned with your true purpose. Others can build entire lives on illusions and never question them, but you cannot, because your awareness disrupts anything that is not authentic. You are not here to maintain the system. You are here to outgrow it, even when that growth feels like loss. What you are experiencing right now is not random, and it is not accidental. It is a precisely timed activation unfolding within your life. It may feel like everything is becoming unclear at once, as if the ground beneath you is shifting in ways you cannot fully explain. People you once felt deeply connected to may now feel distant. Paths that once excited you may now feel empty, and even your own sense of identity may feel unfamiliar. It can seem as though motivation has disappeared without reason, leaving you in a state of confusion and uncertainty. But this is not a breakdown. This is the moment where illusions lose their power. When illusions begin to collapse, the mind struggles to understand what is happening because it no longer has the same reference points to rely on. But your soul recognizes this moment with clarity. Your soul understands that this is the phase where truth begins to emerge, where perception shifts, and where you are no longer able to see the world in the same way you once did. Clarity is often misunderstood as something peaceful and calming, but in reality, clarity can be deeply disruptive. It can dismantle what once felt stable and expose truths that are impossible to ignore. You are beginning to see patterns you once overlooked, to recognize energies that once felt normal, and to feel truths that cannot always be explained logically. This awareness creates discomfort because it removes the ability to pretend, to go back to a state of unconscious acceptance. You may feel like you are losing control, not because something is wrong, but because you are no longer able to participate in illusions in the same way you once did. The version of you that could ignore certain truths is dissolving, and that dissolution can feel like instability. But it is not a loss, it is evolution. It is the expansion of your perception into a level of awareness that cannot be reversed. One of the most challenging aspects of this phase is the sense of isolation that often comes with it. You may find yourself looking at the people around you and realizing that they are still operating within the very illusions you are beginning to see through. Conversations may start to feel shallow, connections may feel misaligned, and you may experience a kind of loneliness that is difficult to put into words. It is not simply the absence of people, but the absence of resonance. However, it is important to understand that you are not being isolated in the way it may appear. You are being repositioned. Your energy is being recalibrated so that it no longer aligns with environments and connections that cannot support your growth. This process can feel like loss, and in many ways, it is a form of release, but it is also alignment in motion. It is the clearing of space for something more authentic to enter your life. As everything begins to shift, there is often a quiet fear that arises beneath the surface, a fear that if these changes continue, you might lose yourself completely. When your identity begins to dissolve, when your direction becomes unclear, and when your past no longer feels like a solid reference point, it can create a sense of disorientation. You may begin to question who you are without the roles, the labels, and the structures you once relied on. But this fear is rooted in a misunderstanding. You are not losing yourself. You are losing the version of yourself that was shaped by survival, by adaptation, and by the need to fit into a reality that was never fully aligned with you. As that version begins to dissolve, what remains is not emptiness, but truth. What remains is your essence, unfiltered and unconditioned, no longer shaped by external expectations, but guided by something far deeper and more authentic. You are now standing in a space that few people ever consciously recognize, the space between endings and beginnings, where the old has already fallen away, but the new has not yet fully formed. This space can feel uncertain, even empty at times, as if you are suspended between two versions of reality without a clear sense of direction. There may be moments where you are tempted to return to what is familiar, not because it is right for you, but because it once gave you a sense of stability. But this moment is not meant to be rushed or escaped. It is meant to be experienced with awareness. This is where your real transformation is taking place, not in the visible changes, but in the internal shift that is redefining who you are at your core. You are being asked to remain present within this in-between space, to trust what you cannot yet see, and to allow what is false to fully dissolve without trying to rebuild it. Because in this quiet, undefined moment, something far more real is beginning to take shape within you. Something that does not depend on illusion, something that cannot be taken away, something that is entirely and undeniably yours. What you cannot yet see, but are already beginning to feel, is that something new is being constructed within you at the same time everything old is dissolving. This is the part of the process most people misunderstand, because externally it looks like nothing is happening, like you are stuck, paused, or even regressing. But internally, there is a precise and intelligent reconstruction unfolding, one that is not based on who you were taught to be, but on who you actually are. Your thoughts are shifting, your emotional responses are changing, your tolerance for what once felt normal is dissolving, and your intuition is becoming louder than your conditioning. This is not random. This is alignment being built from the inside out. You are not being prepared for a small change. You are being prepared for a completely different way of existing, one that requires a stronger connection to your inner truth than anything you have relied on before. You may have noticed that the strategies, habits, and approaches that once helped you move forward are no longer effective. What used to work now feels heavy, forced, or completely blocked. This can create frustration, because part of you wants to regain control by doing what you have always done. But that resistance you are encountering is not failure, it is redirection. You are no longer meant to operate from effort alone. You are being shifted into a state of alignment where force is replaced by flow, where control is replaced by trust, and where external validation is replaced by internal knowing. The old ways feel blocked because they belong to an identity that is no longer active within you. Trying to return to them will only create more resistance, because your energy has already moved beyond that frequency. What once worked was designed for who you were. What is coming next requires who you are becoming. As the external structures begin to fall away, something far more reliable begins to activate within you, your inner guidance. This is not something new being given to you, but something that has always existed, now becoming impossible to ignore. You may notice subtle impulses, quiet realizations, or intuitive nudges that guide you in ways logic cannot fully explain. At first, it may feel unfamiliar or even uncertain, because you have been conditioned to trust external systems more than your own perception. But this phase is teaching you something essential. You are not meant to be led by the noise of the world. You are meant to be guided by the intelligence within you. The more you begin to listen to that inner voice, the clearer it becomes. And the clearer it becomes, the less dependent you feel on anything outside of yourself to define your path. This phase will test you in ways that are not always obvious. It is not a test of strength in the traditional sense, but a test of trust. Can you remain grounded when there is no clear outcome? Can you stay present when the path ahead is not fully visible? Can you allow things to unfold without forcing them into familiar patterns? These are the questions this phase is asking you, not through words, but through experience. Uncertainty is not here to destabilize you, it is here to refine you. It is showing you where you still seek control out of fear, and where you are ready to surrender into something greater. Trust does not mean having all the answers. It means being willing to move forward even when you don't. And every moment you choose trust over fear, you strengthen a part of yourself that cannot be shaken by external circumstances. As the illusions continue to dissolve, something important begins to return to you. Your power. Not the kind of power that comes from control, status, or external validation, but the kind that comes from clarity, presence, and truth. For a long time, your energy may have been invested in maintaining identities, relationships, and paths that were not fully aligned with you. And as those attachments fall away, that energy returns. You begin to feel more centered, more aware, and more connected to yourself in a way that is not dependent on anything outside of you. This is what true power feels like. It is quiet, but undeniable. It does not need to prove itself because it is rooted in something real. And the more you allow the illusions to fall without resistance, the more fully this power becomes available to you. There comes a point in this process where something begins to stabilize again, but it is not the same kind of stability you once knew. It is not built on external structures or predictable patterns, but on a deeper sense of self-awareness and alignment. You begin to recognize yourself in a new way, not through roles or expectations, but through presence and authenticity. Decisions feel clearer, even when they are difficult. Boundaries become natural, rather than forced, and the need for approval begins to fade, replaced by a quiet confidence in your own perception. This is the emergence of your true self, not as an idea, but as a lived experience. It is not something you achieve, but something you allow, by no longer holding on to what you are not. And as this version of you becomes more consistent, your external reality begins to reflect that internal shift in ways that feel both surprising and deeply familiar. When you look back on this phase from a future moment, you will begin to understand why everything had to unfold the way it did. The confusion, the loss, the uncertainty, all of it was part of a larger realignment that you could not fully see while you were inside it. What felt like things falling apart was actually everything being rearranged, not because you were being tested without purpose, but because you were being guided towards something more true than anything you had experienced before. You were never falling behind. You were never off track. You were always being moved, step by step, toward a version of your life that matches who you truly are. And now, as you stand in this moment with a deeper awareness of what is happening within you, there is one truth that becomes impossible to ignore. You were chosen for this phase not because it is easy, but because you are capable of seeing it through. Not because you are meant to struggle, but because you are meant to transform. And not because you are searching for your path, but because you are becoming it.